Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with Lena Löfdahl. Hi, Lena. Welcome back.
Hello, and thank you.
So, Lena, on Wednesdays, we talk about something that is in a Scrum Master's life every day, right? Like change. And of course, I like to call it change leadership because we are leaders in the teams and organizations we work within, but also because it is about helping, whether it's a team, a person, or an organization, helping them through the process of change. And because of that, we want to learn what you have learned, because it's not an easy job. So share with us a change process you were involved with and walk us through, the steps that the change took and highlight for us the tricks, the tips, the techniques you learned at that time that you still apply today.
So I will take you back in time for a few years and at the situation at my current employer when we just started working Agile. So I came in and it was waterfall and the teams had the history of not delivering on time. I think we made 2-3 deliveries during the last 10 years on time. That was how bad it was. So we took the same people that work in the waterfall delivery and put them into Agile teams and say, okay, now you're working Scrum. We had a Scrum Master, of course, developers, had a tester and a PO. Normally, I'm not going to pretend it was easy because it did take some time to get the team to deliver. But then we had a situation where the team actually started delivering and the rest of the organization wasn't really ready for that. The stakeholders were quite surprised, like, what? You need more requirements, but we thought that you had years of work to do. And they were struggling, they were not coordinated. They didn't provide us enough information for the requirements. I even had a team idling, and as a Scrum Master, that is not a good thing. That's basically warning lights going off. But it was quite interesting because you really can see that the organization as a whole was not ready for us to actually start delivering. So one idea that we came up with was to try something that we called the big room planning. And that is just get everyone in the same room, basically throw away the key, plan together, let everyone out and hopefully being in agreement of what they should do during the next upcoming period. And I remember the first time it was introduced by the business side, and they basically they didn't inform us so much. They just invited to this huge meeting. IT came there, and then we got the requirement list. That was quite extensive, you can imagine. Okay, so this is our wish list for the next 5-10 years. It felt like it was super long. And I remember that we went out from that meeting saying, okay, let's not do this again. This is not going to work for us as an organization. And I remember my manager, she came to me afterwards and said, this is a super good idea. So Lena, I'm going to ask you to take care of this from an IT perspective. But I told her, but no one wants to do this. She was like, yeah, but you can fix that. So we set it up with one leading by one representative from IT and one from business side, and I was the one from IT. And then, in order to get people to buy into a change, you need to get their opinions. You need to listen to them. And what we saw was the teams needed the stakeholders to kind of give them a priority or give them information about what they should do in order to deliver that value we're all hunting for. So they basically kind of ended up with being what we call a forcing function for the business to give us the information we need in order to start working. So the second one, we threw everyone into one room and we were using visualization techniques. And when I say that, I mean super simple. We were using big papers and we were printing the team name on top of the paper. We had 4 teams. And then we were working sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3. Epics were basically visualized by post-its. So we put 1 post-it per sprint or 2 post-its or 3 post-its and just visualize this is our capacity. This epic that you want will take us 3 teams or 3 sprints to deliver. It might even take more than one team. But it made it super simple because the business could just walk around in the room, look at the wall and see, why can this team only deliver one epic during the next upcoming period? Well, it's because requirements are unclear. That's, of course, when we started using definition of ready. So we said no, even before they ended up in the teams. But it made us have a pretty good discussion. Why is it so big? Well, it's because you wanted this small part, and this functionality is actually taking us 2 sprints to build. And then the stakeholders were like, but what if we remove that because that's not so important? And I said, okay, 1 sprint left. Perfect. So that's actually something that kind of brought us together as an organization a little bit more.
So you're saying that the visualization itself helped create these conversations, that the conversations themselves led to a shared understanding. But you said something I want to explore a little bit further. So you said we put we put papers per sprint, like sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, and then we put either 1, 2, or 3 post-its per sprint for the epics the team could take on. So and you said so that we could visualize capacity. Was there, like, were you using something specific for that? Like, did you have data from the past, or did you just come up with a number based on the team's gut feeling? How did you decide how many epics to take per sprint per team?
That's a good question. We were using t-shirt sizes at that time, and looking back, of course, at historical data for other epics that we have made and the velocity of the current team. So we were using t-shirt size and story points velocity, more or less. And of course, this was always a guess, like everything else is with estimation. You guess at how long it will take.
But for me, I think the cool thing about the story you just shared is how that aspect of visualizing created the conversations. And it wasn't really, the visualization that led to the breakthrough. It was the conversation after the visualization. And I think that's really important, because if you don't get people in a room, you called it big room planning. If you don't get people in the room, those conversations can take weeks or months over email. But when you get them in the room, they happen just like that, because people are face to face, right?
Yeah. And I think that was a super strong insight for me, that this is what happens. The visualization helped us to have the right conversation that we needed to have all along. And just having everyone available at the same time sped those discussions up quite a lot. We didn't have to change. I mean, you're describing the email game, right? We didn't have to chase people around with the emails. And we did that. It took forever to get simple answers. We basically just threw them into a room. This was pre-COVID. We gave them fika, of course. You have to give some candy, some sweets to keep the energy up. And we just posted everything on the wall. We changed scope. We had discussions. I think also what I want to lift is that we left everyone shape this process. We took feedback from everyone. We have the big room planning originally started out with 4 teams. During the next upcoming 3 years, we went from 4 teams to 90 teams. I'm talking 90 now. That's a pretty impressive number. And that's not because we forced the teams to join. It was because they wanted to join when they saw this is facilitating our discussions with our stakeholders.
Yeah, making things faster and easier to agree on.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually one of the things that I very often remember. There's a lot of discussion about scaling frameworks and so on. And obviously the smart Scrum Master will pick the best out of each framework and use it, right? And I think that the big room planning, which is something that happens that is described in several of the scaling frameworks, is actually one of the great insights that helped, at least in my own experience, help teams come much faster to an agreement with stakeholders. And also, like, when there's dependencies between teams, that is also handled much faster.
Yeah. It is. There's a magic with having everyone in the same room, free at the same time, being able to take the discussions. And that includes top management, because they are sometimes the ones who need to have a deciding vote on what should be done and what should not be done. And I want to stress here that when we had 90 teams joining, that was about 60% of the company. Then the top management actually looked at the process, said, this is something good. And they decided to go company-wide. So it is now company-wide. That is super cool.
And it started with 4 teams. I think that's very important to reiterate, right? It's like you don't need to go all in with the first try.
No, don't do that. You need to go back, improve, have this continuous improvement discussion to find the small tweaks that will make it a process that everyone wants to work with. That's the only way you can have this kind of impact.
Yeah, it would be lovely to have a description from you guys about how you pull off a 90-team big room planning session.
It's more now.
It's not easy.
No. But it works out pretty good, I think.
Absolutely. Lena, it was a pleasure to hear that story. Also very inspiring. So for all of you guys out there in the middle of a move to scaled Agile or scaled Scrum, that's definitely a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Lena.
You're welcome.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.